today. This is going to be a really good topic for all of us at the beginning of the year since, we're back fresh from holidays. We've got a lot of reflections done from last year and we're trying really hard to crush our goals. But we also don't want to burn out. So it's going to be a lot of tips we're coming in from and going to introduce you to Vi really shortly. Yes, hi, May. But just introduce myself. So I'm Michelle, your host and co-director of Digital Nomad CMX Community powered by Bevy. And we've love to get to know some of you guys more in the chat. So just feel free to drop any of, your socials or get talking about where you're from and how the weather is over there because we're all around the world in this community. I'm joining in from the land of the Wurundjeri people known as Melbourne in Australia. I do pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. Sasmini, our behind-the-scenes chat moderator, is co-director as well of the Digital Nomad CMX community. She's based in Sri Lanka at the moment, and she's the founder of Digital Nomad Live, a newsletter and a community for slow mats. So now, while each of you are getting to know each other in the chat, I'd love to introduce you guys all to Vi Andrews. They're a natural connector, a strategically cultivating community in the film and media industry. So they are a community lead at Ideas United, and they are very experienced at multidisciplinary marketing managing. They've managed a global community of creators committed to driving positive social impact through their work. There's a lot in here, but I'm going to get through more of their experience. So Vi moved to Mexico in 2021. And they've lived there and worked remotely while traveling all around the country. And today they split their time between Miami, Atlanta, and Mexico. So all of you guys in the other side of the world, you guys can be in the same time zone as Vi. They channeled their passion for social change through photography and also producing really compelling stories. Please get up for Vi.
Awesome. Well, hello, everyone. First of all, I'm so excited to be here. On the other side of these sessions, I've seen a couple of the recordings that have been hosted recently. So excited to be joining y'all tonight, since we're all over the world. I know it's very early in the morning for some. It's 8 o'clock in the evening for me, and I know it's midday for others. So thank y'all, everyone, for finding the time to talk with us. Sasmini and Michelle, thank y'all for giving me the opportunity to talk about this topic, which is so important to me, burning out and trying to prevent that at the start of a new year. So I'm thrilled to be here today to talk about something that affects all of us as community managers, which is maintaining our energy while doing the work that we love. And so today, the session is all about thriving as location-independent community managers. And so we're going to be exploring practical strategies for preventing burnout and creating real work-life balance, which might be elusive to some, might be a myth, but I'm telling y'all, I found it. And so I want to help y'all find it or tap back into it. And so someone who has navigated the challenges of global community management while also working and traveling across different locations, I definitely understand firsthand the unique pressures that we face. And so today we're going to be exploring not just how to survive, but also how to truly thrive in our roles this year. And so who am I? So to get started, I want to introduce myself. So I am Vi, Vaisha Vi Andrews. I am originally from Miami, Florida, here in the United States. I serve as community lead for Ideas United, which is a creative studio based in Atlanta, Georgia. And in my role, I manage a community of global creative professionals from around the world to help connect them to professional opportunities and build their networks and inspire others through their creative potentials in their crafts. And so in July of 2021, I made the bold decision to relocate to Mexico City, where I lived and worked throughout the country and Latin America for a while. And this third tip, or this fourth point, for those who are wondering, my big three are Sagittarius Sun, Taurus Rising, and Aquarius Moon, just if anybody was wondering. I'm really passionate about the topic of burnout and finding work-life balance because prior to moving to Mexico, my life didn't really have balance. I spent majority of my time either working or thinking about work. And so I was burnt out before I even knew what that saying was. And it wasn't until I was in a foreign country surrounded by strangers who didn't speak the same language that I did that really forced me to find time for more than just work. And so this was actually the best decision that I was able to make for myself because it allowed me to pour more into my life. And because of that, I became a much more happier, fulfilled, and energetic person in my personal life. And then subsequently, a better coworker, employee, and community manager in my professional life. And so, why we're here. To get started, I want to talk about everybody who's in the room right now. So as community managers, we give a lot to our communities. And we care really deeply about the work that we do and the people that we do it for and who we do it with. And if you're anything like me, you probably already have a long list of goals that you want to accomplish for your communities in 2025. I won't ask you to raise your hand, but I know we probably all are already working through those to-do lists. And I definitely want to be the first to let you know, like, you are going to accomplish great things with and for your communities this year. Don't worry about it. You wouldn't be here if you didn't care immensely about how you show up for your communities and the work that you do with them. And so in this session, my goal is to, hey, Gemini, my goal is to make sure that as we step into this new year, that we also have the tools handy to accomplish some of those great things, while also establishing and maintaining a healthy work-life balance. And so to get started, as I move into more of the session, I kind of want to see where folks are or where they think, what they think about the term work-life balance. So feel free to drop in the chat, like, what's one word that describes how you feel about your current look on work-life balance, or where you currently stand with work-life balance in your own life. One word response, and we'll see what folks say. But I wanted to chat a little bit about peaceful. Oh, I love that. Yes. Peaceful is definitely what we want to think about when thinking about our personal and our professional lives. That's a great way to start, actually. Joke. Deborah's keeping it real with us. Getting there. Yes, we are getting there. And so before we dive into definitions about like discussing challenges or solutions to work-life balance and burnout, I want to introduce a concept that has really helped me monitor my own signs of burnout on a weekly basis, and also use it to assess where some of the folks in the group are right now. So I have this thing called a productivity fuel gauge. And so just like on a car or on your vehicle, burnout doesn't just happen all at once. It usually builds over time as your energy depletes. And so just like a car's tank goes from full to empty across mileage, our ability to show up full of energy diminishes if we don't find those ways to fill it back up. And so F, or full, really means like you're fully charged up. You got a full tank of gas and you're ready to go. Half a tank is you're trying your best and you're making it through, kind of like what Sasmini said of getting there. And then before you know it, though, you can get to E for empty, which means like you're running on empty and you've got nothing left to give. And so in the past, for me, I would start the year or the quarter off with my tank on full. So I'd be armed with so much energy to tackle all the new projects that I had or keep them moving along. But over time, my tank would start to decrease due to different obligations or things pulling me in multiple directions. And so I used to wait until my tank was on E before I slowed down and took the time that I needed for myself to recharge and reset. But now I try to keep at least 3/4 of a tank full by lowering possibilities of burnout before they get too overwhelming. And so as we move on to more of the section, I want to see what level you all are coming to the space with today. So you can just drop in the chat F, E, or half. So like, are we starting off 2025 with a full tank, or are we already feeling like we need to refuel? So just drop in F, E, or half. Okay, we got some E squared. Okay, then we definitely need to be here. F, we got Fs, and I love the energy you're bringing. Half, 3/4, F-ish. That's great. Awesome. And so I think all of these are like really great places to be aware of where you are. So there's no downside of either you're on F or you're on E. My goal is that we leave this session understanding what burnout is, how it shows up in our lives, and over time, how it depletes us, and be aware of like what does deplete us so we can kind of tackle it before we're fully overwhelmed. And so first off, what is burnout? And so to define burnout, it's a state of physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion, usually caused by prolonged and excessive stress, often resulting from a mismatch of either demands and resources or demands in work or personal life. And so it's usually characterized by 3 different points. So emotional fatigue, which means like feeling overwhelmed, detached, or drained from your work. There's also decreased motivation, so a loss of enthusiasm or a reduced sense of accomplishment in things that usually bring you accomplishment. And then the next symptom is physical symptoms. So that's things that show up in your body like persistent tiredness, headaches, or even sleep disruptions. Are you not being able to get a full night of sleep or not being able to get to sleep as quickly as before? And then the last characteristic of burnout is behavioral changes. So are you procrastinating a little bit more? Are you withdrawing from your tasks? Are you withdrawing from personal obligations? Or do you see a decreased productivity in your life currently? And then how it affects us in our daily lives is it has a huge impact on our personal relationships. So Science of People actually published findings that 83% of professionals state that work-related burnout negatively affects their personal relationships. So burnout isn't necessarily just taking an effect in your professional life, it's also showing up in your personal life. And so then the second effect is a high prevalence of work-related stress. So an American Psychological Association study found that 79% of employees have experienced work-related stress in some capacity. And then this final effect, which to me is pretty daunting, is that burnout also has an effect on our increased risk of health issues. So there was a study that showed that employees experiencing burnout have 57% increased risk of workplace absence, a 84% increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes, and a 40% increased risk of cardiovascular disease. So this just shows that there are a lot of reasons why we'd want to prevent burnout in our lives as much as possible. And so not only going from what is burnout, but what causes burnout. So it's important for us to understand the causes of burnout and be able to spot those early warning signs and intervene before everything becomes overwhelming. Because just like checking your car's dashboard, checking that fuel gauge, knowing what to look out for can help you avoid getting to E for empty on your fuel gauge. And so here are some common triggers that can allow burnout to manifest more quickly in our lives. And the first one here is constant notifications. So if you're feeling tied to your phone or your email, that can make it hard to disconnect, which I know firsthand. I have fallen to that many times. And this constant notification leads to mental exhaustion and a sense of always needing to be on. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. The next trigger that causes burnout is irregular hours due to time zones. So working across global time zones disrupts sleep patterns and creates a lack of routine. And so like us, managing global communities can create unique pressure points like scheduling challenges or cultural considerations and holiday closures. Like I'm sure it was a lot just for the people who are here today, knowing that there are some who it's 5 o'clock in the morning, the day hasn't even started, but they're on a professional development call. And then all the way down to it's 8 o'clock, 9 p.m. in the evening. That's a unique kind of challenge that folks should be aware of. And so there are some other location independent lifestyle challenges that we as digital nomads can experience, such as navigating team-based work across those different time zones, scheduling meetings. And over time, all of this unpredictability can really drain your energy and focus. And then the final trigger, this third one, is just this pressure to always be on. So things like feeling responsible for instant responses across time zones creates a cycle of overworking that impacts your personal time and prevents the true relaxation that we need. And so one more time in the chat, I kind of want to see, I want some folks to reflect on some of the things in our own lives that can head us in this direction of burnout. So I just want to ask each of you to answer in the chat which triggers resonate most with your current work situation. Like I said, for me, it's a little mix of the pressure to always be on. Yes, Asmini agrees. And also the constant notifications. Like I've definitely needed and started and stopped a few times a digital detox, or like just getting off of social media at a certain time, or closing off my notifications at certain points to stop the notifications. And so then once we understand the causes of burnout, then we need to think about like spotting the warning signs. Michelle says a slight PTSD from Slack notifications. Y'all, I literally had to turn that notification sound off, because if I hear friends on a friend's phone, I'm just like, what? It's wild how that has affected us. But spotting some of the warning signs. So like, as mentioned, it's important to spot those signs of burnout. And so here are some common physical, emotional, and behavioral signs to look out for. So like emotional signs can include irritability or frustration. So if you're feeling impatient with tasks or team members, that's a sign that you're headed in a certain direction that you might want to slow down. And the next one is detachment. So a sense of disconnecting or cynicism towards work that maybe used to bring you a lot of joy. And then the last emotional sign is just overwhelm. So like, are you feeling like even small tasks are becoming too big to take on by yourself? And then the next kind of subsection of those warning signs are the physical signs. So chronic fatigue could be one, like waking up really tired despite a full night's sleep, having headaches or muscle tension. Do you have physical manifestations of that stress in your body? And then the last one is not only not being able to feel rested, but also not going to sleep. So sleep disruptions. Do you have trouble falling asleep or staying asleep due to overthinking? And then the last topic of those warning signs are behavioral signs. So procrastination, delaying tasks, or missing deadlines. Reduced efficiency. So tasks that were once easy to take now take a lot longer to get finished. And then the last point for this is withdrawal. So are you avoiding interactions with colleagues, or avoiding getting to work that you used to really like, or avoiding connecting with your community in ways that you really used to love? And so I know this is all a lot, and I'm going to get to all the good stuff of like, how do we get past this point? But I want us to take a few moments to really think about where we are right now. So I'm not going to ask y'all to put in the chat, but definitely just think about what are the warning signs, or what are some of the warning signs that show up in your life, and think about how those have been showing up maybe recently. And before we move on, I really want to share that recognizing burnout isn't a sign of failure, but of self-awareness. So by identifying those triggers and those early signs, you're taking the first step towards protecting your own energy and your own well-being. And so these triggers and challenges that I mentioned don't diminish or take away from the work that we do, but they do add up. And so it's important for us to acknowledge how they affect the energy that we bring to our work, and how it might take away from ourselves outside of that work. And so as mentioned, we're going to talk about how do we see these signs of burnout, and then how do we prevent them. And so now that we understand what causes burnout and how to spot those warning signs, I really want us to spend the rest of this session exploring those challenges on a deeper level, and how they relate to us as location independent community managers, and then talk about some effective strategies to prevent those. And like I said, our goal is to create habits that keep our tanks full while minimizing the effects of what depletes them. And so this first portion of roadblocks that I want to talk about when it comes to preventing us from having that elusive, that wanted work-life balance is one that really affects me a lot. And so it's the feeling or the pressure to have that always on approach to community management. And I think Sasmini also talked about that a little bit as well, that she feels that. But I think because of the nature of our roles, it's and also a usual lack of ample support. Community management can make us fall into this trap of feeling like we're the only one capable of getting the job done, and that we always have to be available to solve the problem, which hopefully we know is not true. And I hope that it's not true, that you're not the only one, that you do have support. But some of the common triggers for this mentality can include having a constant stream of notifications that disrupts your focus. So we talked about those Slacks, those email notifications, and even small requests from other team members asking you to do that one task or do that one thing. This also shows up in irregular work hours. So especially when working across different time zones, you might be in one time zone, but your team works in a different one. And so when you're awake and you're working or you're ending your day, they may just be starting their days. And this leads to that pressure to always be on, even outside of working hours. Or maybe you have unclear working hours in general. Maybe you're one of those people who doesn't have an 8-hour workday. You kind of are just always available to get a task done. And so we get so locked into our work that we end up being less productive, and that really helps no one in the long run. And so to help combat these roadblocks, I've come up with what I call the full tank formula. I'm really going along with this like energy, fuel, gas tank situation. I don't know where we're going on this road trip. This is an intercontinental road trip. But I have this full tank formula, which are a few helpful tips and tools to help you recognize these common triggers and minimize them before they get too much. And so the full tank formula for combating the always on pressure that we experience is one, to manage your notifications. Use certain things like do not disturb modes when doing focused work, and prioritize your messages with tools like Slack filters or email rules. And so utilizing these settings on those apps to only be notified when you're mentioned, or to only receive email notifications for designated priority senders, can really help reduce the amount of notifications that you get that you might not necessarily need to respond to. And then next up, you want to make sure that you're setting expectations for you and your team. So make sure that you're clearly communicating your availability to people on your team, and then create after hours auto responses to reinforce those boundaries. So let folks know that you won't be available after a certain time, but you'll be back on at that next time. And then use tools like Google Calendar to set a work time window, which helps me a lot. So I'll set that I'm only available to meet from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on that work calendar window. And then when using meeting scheduling tools like Calendly or HubSpot, where people can automatically schedule meetings with you, make sure that you use their availability settings to be honest about when you actually want to be open for meetings. So just because you're available during 8 hours, it doesn't necessarily mean that you should block off 8 hours for meetings. Maybe it'd be best if you block off just 2 of those hours for meetings and you spend the rest of your day doing something else. And if you're working on like a project management work software amongst your team, like a Asana or a Monday.com, or even Notion, make sure that you're utilizing things like the away and on status updates to let your team members know when you're not available. And this will also silence any notifications that they send you when you're set to away. And lastly, and most importantly, especially if you work on teams, say seek support from others on your team. So even though we feel like we have to do it all, that might not be the case. So pinpoint the areas that you need support in and crowdsource the support from your teams. And I really do hope that y'all have people in your teams or in your corners that you can crowdsource that support from. to kind of take some of the weight off of your shoulders. And then the next roadblock that I want to mention is the challenge of coordinating communities across multiple time zones. And we talked about it a lot, but so I feel like this is a challenge that's specifically for those of us who either manage global communities with members in various time zones, or those of us who live location independent lifestyles and are ourselves moving across various time zones. And so some of those common triggers from this roadblock include the increased need to schedule meetings across multiple time zones and managing real-time communication within those global teams. And so a perfect example that I have is that when I was living in Mexico, there was one project that I led where I was scheduling an initiative with my team that was based in Atlanta, which was 2 hours ahead of me. And then we were activating community members that were in Cairo, Egypt, and Sydney, Australia, who were 7 hours and 14 hours ahead of us. And the math that it took to try and bring all those worlds together at the same time was overwhelming in itself. Fun. I love that. That's one of the things I love about my job. But to be honest, it was a lot to keep up with over a few weeks. And so a few more unique factors to call out are navigating those diverse cultural considerations and ensuring inclusive practices across regions. And so these two factors mean that you not only have to be aware of certain things like holidays and federal closures that are in effect where you work and where your work is based, but also the closures and the holidays of where your community members are and where you might be traveling to. So like, are you currently in Latin America where several countries celebrate their Independence Days on the same week and most of those businesses close for majority of that week? If so, that can delay certain initiatives, travels, or meetings. And so my full tank formula for this scenario is to develop asynchronous communication. So utilize tools like Google Drive and their shared folders, or Boomerang, or Notion Teams, or Loom video recordings to share updates and give feedback without requiring that live interaction that you might not be able to have across time zones. And you can save really important notes for when your calendars overlap. Like, let's say you work on one side of the world while your team works on another side. And so you can be catching them up on updates written or by recordings, and then y'all can schedule meetings for when your calendars overlap to talk about those important details. And then my next tip for this is to try to use time blocking across time zones. So utilize the calendar tools that you have to allocate time for specific tasks and to batch meetings. So if your work hours start a few hours before your team is online, like when I was in Mexico, my work started about 2 to 3 hours before my team actually got online, I would use that time for focused work that I only needed to really focus in on my own and knock out all of that stuff. And then I would batch any meetings with any of my team members during the hours that our calendars overlapped. So we never like really missed a lot of the in-person synchronous communication. And then lastly, it's really important to understand cultural sensitivity of where you are. So be aware of the different norms, holidays, and expectations of your community members wherever they are. So what I did was I created several digital calendars, either based on where I was or based on where majority of my community members in the world were, that reminded me of holidays and important events in those territories to make sure that there weren't any surprises. And then lastly, I also tried to stay connected to like news of all the regions that I needed to be familiar with in case there were any major happenings within the world. And my third roadblock that I've run into is a challenge of building consistency in a location independent lifestyle. So this is going more towards like the personal part meshing with that professional and kind of the dynamics and challenges that happen within that. So like frequent traveling and managing work across time zones can really disrupt your sense of consistency that we might have when we're based in one location full time. And so this makes it hard to maintain routines and avoid burnout. And so some of those common triggers can include frequent location changes, disrupting your daily rhythms, or complex time zone management across those regions. As I mentioned, being in Mexico, but coordinating with folks in Cairo, folks in Sydney and Atlanta. And then lastly, just the difficulty maintaining consistent routines when traveling. And so arranging travel and arriving to a new location already presents its own learning curves. So having to adapt a whole new way of life and work can also create even more problems if you're not prepared. But we're prepared. And so here are some ways that I've been able to try my best to maintain that consistency when living location independent lifestyle. And like many of these tips, I've already discussed them, but I want you to see them in the context of how they can help you create that consistency in your own work life when moving to various places or being in various places. And so the first tip is automation tools. Automate. Use apps like Buffer or Calendly to automate repetitive tasks or send reminders when you don't need to actually sit there and do them yourselves. Boomerang has a Gmail plugin that can automatically send follow-ups based on however many days after you've sent a specific email, or can send a reminder to someone if they haven't sent you anything back yet. And then the next step is around boundary setting. So block off your non-working hours in your shared calendars and schedule that work in those focused time blocks using tools like Google Calendar, and just make sure that others can see those time blocks so they don't disrupt you, or they can hopefully try not to disrupt you. We know sometimes people see them and then they'll still do whatever they want, but that's when I say, hey, this is blocked off. Can we try this another time? But we still try and maintain flexibility. And then lastly, really build a global support network. So join virtual communities for that peer support and resource sharing. And then also check out digital nomad groups via Facebook and WhatsApp specific to your location. So one thing that I would do when I was traveling around Mexico and Latin America was, before I went to a new location, I would get on Facebook and I would search the groups. And I'm sure everybody here knows this, so I'm going to move through it quickly. But I would search digital nomad Mexico City, or digital nomad Playa del Carmen, or digital nomad Rio de Janeiro, and see who was there, see how they created their own routines in those spaces that I wanted to be, so that I could probably adopt something of the same when I got there. And okay, moving to the last two areas. These two really focus on how you can create boundaries specific to wherever you are that can help you minimize the possibility of burning out personally. So these are going to be talking about self-care and some of the personal things, the reminders that we might not remember when we get overwhelmed in our day-to-day. And so, as mentioned beforehand, constant movement in our location-independent lifestyles really creates disruption in our routines, and it impacts our health and our work-life balance. And so it's really important to pinpoint those triggers and then plan to meet them head on. And so some of the common triggers when trying to maintain self-care while constantly on the move is limited access to wellness routines, inconsistent sleep and eating schedules, challenges maintaining exercise habits, and difficulty establishing local support systems. And so these are actually really big stressors for me, because I've learned over the years that routine and self-care are very necessary for my success. When I'm out of my routine, even in the slightest, I can start to see and feel those physical triggers and those physical warning signs come up. And so one of the first things that I figure out when I'm traveling long-term to a new place is, how can I create a successful routine while there? And so I usually start before I even arrive. So once my lodging is booked, I'm searching Google Maps for the nearest coffee shop so I can do remote work. I'm searching, or the nearest co-working space. I'm looking to see where the closest gym is so I can make sure I'm getting my movement in. And then I'm also seeing where the closest market or grocery store is, because that's a part of my daily routine as well. Because those are staples for me wherever I go. And so some more tools for establishing work-life balance in this routine of self-care is create location independent routines that really serve as bookends for the start and ending of your work days. So I fully am a proponent of having a morning routine. Commit to movement in the morning, whether that's going on walks, doing yoga, going to the gym, and then ending your workday with an evening routine. So anchor your day with something for you, whether that's a salsa class, which I tried and failed in. And then I tried soccer, which then I just became a viewer, an audience member, or going to a language exchange class, just something to be able to close your laptop at the end of the day and pour back into yourself. And I would really say take advantage of being in a new location by exploring the area that you're in and trying local activities to really stay refreshed. And then lastly, here are just a couple of like wellness things and self-care things that you should probably keep on hand no matter where you are. So like resistance bands for movement, meditation apps like Calm that you can use on the go. And just a shameless plug of my cool life, I really wanted to speak a bit briefly more about the tip of exploring new locations. So about a year into living in Mexico City, I decided to move out of my apartment there, got rid of most of my belongings, and I started backpacking across Central America for about 4 months to see more of the country. And so during this time, I was working remotely and I ran a local race. I visited some of the most scenic areas in the country and ate local cuisine. And because my thought was that, like, after all, I was there to see more of the world. And so I did just that. And through this, I felt so much more connected to the country and the history. And then my work began to thrive. And I honestly got a very large promotion during that season of pouring into myself while also doing a lot of the work that I was already doing. And this last one is kind of just a reminder of even when we have the best intentions, it can still be really hard to prevent burnout if we don't have the right tools. So decreased effectiveness and potential burnout can still show up. So some of these warning signs can include like inconsistent application of available resources or not monitoring your personal well-being indicators. And so my tip for making sure that you don't allow some of the burnout triggers to creep into and overwhelm you are to create your own burnout prevention plan. So put together a list that includes some of the personal non-negotiables, like you're going to sleep at a reasonable time, you're going to exercise daily, you're going to abide by the communication boundaries that you set. Some of those things that you can go back to and remind yourself of what you said you were going to do and hold yourself accountable. And then the last one to help you with that is check in with your support system regularly. So whether it's coffee chats or calls, share challenges and wins with your team. Allow them to help you hold you accountable as well, and vice versa. And that's it. So by recognizing these challenges and implementing these proactive strategies, we can really move from reactive survival to thriving. And so before we end, I want to quickly see how we can personalize these ideas into actionable routines tailored to your own unique journeys. And so that's all I have as far as tips and challenges. But I really want y'all to be thinking about how you can imagine your best year and what that looks like outside of burnout. So I want you to think about what we've discussed today, what burnout is, why it's important to try and keep your productivity fuel gauge closer to full and not running on empty. And I really want you to imagine what your best year yet can look like. And I really hope it is one that it doesn't include running low and burning out. And so as we close out, I want you to think about how you will work to prevent burnout in your life in 2025 by creating your own full tank formula. So take a moment to think about your current approach to preventing burnout. What strategies are working well for you? And what areas could you use some improvement on? And then consider some of your daily routines right now. What are your boundaries? How do you manage your energy levels throughout the day or throughout the quarter? And then which of these aspects feels really strong that you want to continue to follow? and then which ones might need a bit more attention, and what are some things that you might need to take out of your life in order to make room for some of those things that can help you preserve your energy. And so some of those ideas can be like what's on the screen of implementing time blocking, setting up consistent routines, creating that support system that you check in with. And so I do want to hear from you. So what are some takeaways that you'll be using to help prevent burnout in 2025? And I guess the last question that I asked for y'all to respond to in the chat is just, what will you do to keep your tank full this year? And it can be some of the things that I mentioned in these slides, or something that you feel like you've been wanting to focus on and just haven't gotten the time to. Feel free to type in the chat or come off mute. But
thank you, Vi. I was so immersed. I was like ready to just be a keyboard warrior in the chat. But then I remembered that it was my turn. So I'll ask the Q&A just while everyone else is responding to that really great question. And yes, do follow Vi on all of their socials. I love your Instagram too. You didn't plug that one in, but like love watching your just adventure across Mexico and like everywhere else. But yes, let's get into the Q&A. So May asked, do you have any tips for finding work-friendly cafes and spaces in a locality? And is there like a website or an app that you prefer to use for that?
oh man, I feel like honestly, Sasmini can also help with this, because I know our paths crossed in Mexico City and we both had some of the same favorite cafes. I love a coffee shop to just go in, find a little nook and spend time there, especially in a foreign place, because you can just keep going there. You can people can see you coming daily, and you just create this relationship. But honestly, I either just use Google to really see the reviews. A lot of people say they also put reviews about like the Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi is very important. So if it's a good cafe that has a lot of reviews and they say, oh, the Wi-Fi is shaky, I'll probably just plan to go there to read a book. I wouldn't plan to go there to spend like a good afternoon. Or Instagram. Like when I was in Mexico City, I did a lot of like hashtags for like CDMX coffee and stuff like that. And it never led me astray.
Awesome. Sasmini, do you have anything to add?
I can give a couple of because I'm actively traveling right now, and one of the things is like Google Maps is like very robust. When you go into the reviews, you can like search like certain words. So I have I only can have oat milk, so I usually go and check like oat milk on reviews, and then sort of like go to the menu and see whether they serve oat milk, depending on like the type of like locality I'm in. And then Google Maps has like this new feature. When you like type the food, it gives all pictures of the dishes now, and you can like scroll through the pictures and sort of like find it. So same with like the vibe, like you can just say coffee and like then it will give pictures of like the cafes on like a different screen, and you can like look for it. Mainly Google Maps, but have to keep in mind, so like in US I use like Google Maps plus Yelp to check out like what is like the process looks like when you want to go into a restaurant or a cafe, like whether they allow people to stay in. When I'm in like Malaysia, I don't trust Google Maps much, but I do like go into like looking for like, it's really hard to find like certain cafes in like which floor in which mall. So I would like look for like location tips, like how to get to the place. When you can't, like when you see Google Maps, you will know whether that is being used a lot or not in that particular locality. If it is not being used, I usually talk to like someone who has been there before or something, and like sort of find out like what is the app people go to review like cafes in the like locality, and like especially like Facebook as well. And one more thing is like sometimes before you go to the location, you won't be able to find really good cafes, but after you go to the location and when you like sort of like check for nearby things, you should be able to find more things. So that's what I do a lot. And like I usually don't go to places which has like really low reviews, as in like the number of reviews. Like if it is like 50 reviews, even if it is 4.9 stars, I won't go. Like I would like choose like 100 reviews place or something like that. So I do like a lot of like Google Maps. I think I need to make a video around this as well.
Someone
Yeah,
needs to come up with an app or something. Yeah. It's
yeah,
just time consuming. Yeah.
yeah. And like there's
Thanks.
like a lot of blogs, especially Pinterest, and then like TikTok. Like yeah, TikTok is like my also like search engine most of the times, even if I don't make TikTok videos. Yeah.
Thanks.
Awesome. Amazing. So we all know how to get to a working cafe and to get job done now when we're out and about.
Oh yeah, one more thing beyond cafes. I also started doing like co-working spaces. So if you are in a city that has a lot of major co-working spaces, definitely try like they usually have like day passes or they'll do guest passes or like your first time will be free just to check that out as well. Once I was actually thinking about being long-term in Mexico City, I definitely did like a co-working free trial tour. And I was unapologetic about it. I was like, there are probably 12 different co-working locations and hubs in this city. I don't want to just put my money into the first one I see. I want to check out the vibe. Is it close to where I live? Is it close to a metro station? Do I like the people who work there at the same time that I do? And that was fun in itself. That was all an adventure on its own, is to check out the different kind of experiences at each of those co-working spaces. And it did make me feel a lot less guilty about going to spend half a day at the co-working space versus ordering a drink or a food every 20, 30 minutes, an hour at a cafe so they don't kick me out. So check those out too.
That's a really good hot tip. I love the free, being unapologetic about the free passes. Like, why not? Like, you're making a decision, you're gonna make a good one. We've got just 5 minutes left. There was a question I didn't know if I had time to pop in, and this was something that just popped in my head and something personal, I think, that I'd love for you to answer. But do you have any tips on how to basically maintain boundaries when new opportunities pop up, or when, you know, a lot of people are asking for your time? Like, how do you say yes and no to the right things? And do you have like, you know, a formula for that, or what's your insights, I guess?
Oh man, no, we could have a whole other hour about this, which is something like that has been very important and necessary for me that I feel like I'm still trying and learning on my own. But one thing that has helped me is defining my goals and seeing if that opportunity fits within my goals. Like, I never directly say no to something, but I also decided that I'm not going to directly immediately say yes to it as well. So if there's an opportunity that comes up that might take me away from one thing or might meet a great opportunity, but it's also going to take a lot of work for me to do and to execute, I have to weigh the pros and cons. So I don't immediately say yes to something. I ask people, can I take a moment to think about that? Can you give me 24 hours? Can you give me a week? Even when Sasmini reached out to me during a crazy time in my life to do this session. It's a session, a topic that I love, but it was also when I was moving across different countries and there was so much happening. And so I said, can you give me a couple of days to decide? And then so I go back and I think, okay, what are the goals in my life right now? What do I really want to be spending time on? And how can this help me with that goal? If a goal for you is to really move forward in your career, then you might be able to make a little bit of sacrifice for time or energy for a 3-month period. But if a goal that you set for yourself is, I'm actually going to step back from the professional and really think about how do I pour into my personal, to my family, then taking up a huge professional opportunity might take you away from your family. And you have to decide, is it worth it right now? So take time, really think back on your goals, and then give yourself time to answer that question. Yes. Grace. I love that. Express gratitude, be respectful when articulating your message, actively listen to the other person. ask curious and generative questions, and collaborate on an action plan. Thank you, Anne. That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Anne. I've never heard of that before. I'm going to copy and paste that into my notes so I don't lose it.
It's a very effective tool in terms of communicating very diplomatically and gracefully. So I use it a lot with the clients and with my students before. It's really starting with gratitude. So whatever they say, ask you, especially in person during like those kind of call or like in-person events, it's just like, I really appreciate whatever you say, what you ask, and just really acknowledging the effort and thought putting into that, regardless if it was, offensive, that you felt offended, or just a general thing. And have a pause. Another big thing is to have a pause. If it's email, it's easy to pause, not to reply straight away. But if it's in person, just take a deep breath and really collect yourself for like 2-3 breaths before you respond to anything. So just a very quick fix kind of tool.
My God, that's amazing. Thank you. Now we're going to wrap up really soon. It's like 2 minutes before we're about to leave. So Hillary, thanks for joining. I think she's left already, but yeah, that was basically it. So thank you for everyone. Like there's a lot that's going on behind the scenes. So thank you, Sasmini, and thank you, Vi, for preparing a wonderful presentation. We do have a WhatsApp group as well for all of you guys who haven't joined the WhatsApp group. Sasmini will pop a link in the chat. So remember to fill in the form and then we'll get an invite sent out to you to join the WhatsApp group where all the fun happens basically between this session and the next. So we host monthly sessions around community building, especially around digital communities around the world. And for everyone here who's loved this event, I'd love for you guys to also fill out the form on the feedback to give Vi as much feedback as possible to, help them improve and help them understand how this presentation has helped us today.